Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to our panelists and participants joining from around the world. We are pleased to welcome you to the T20 Policy Roundtable, Advances in the Food Systems through Digital Technology and Innovation. This event is supported by the Ministry of Law and Human Rights, FNF Indonesia, and CIPS. I would like to thank our participants for attending our session today. The said event is part of the T20 Task Force on Food Security and Sustainable Agriculture. My name is Aziza Fauzi. I'm a junior researcher at the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies, or CIPS, from the Food Security and Agriculture Unit. I will be moderating today's discussion. We are the co-host institution for Task Force 4 on Food Security and Sustainable Agriculture for T20 Indonesia with Institut Pertanian Bogor. Today, I will be guiding you through our discussion, and I am looking forward to learning from our presenters and participants. Healthy food should be accessible for all. According to an article in the World Economic Forum, 3 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet, and more than 1.5 billion cannot afford a diet with the minimum level of essential nutrients. Tens of millions more people are pushed into severe malnutrition, food insecurity, and starvation as food price increases due to global food supply disruption and rising agricultural costs, especially after the pandemic. Securing stable food supplies at affordable prices is an immediate humanitarian need. While the world is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical conflicts and climate change add to the long list of challenges that need to be tackled to ensure food security. Adopting digital technology and innovation in agriculture can be one of the solutions to ensure a more sustainable and resilient food system. Today, we will discuss three key themes. First, how could the G20 serve as a platform to foster innovation and technologies to promote sustainable agriculture and better quality food? Second, how can technologies promote sustainable agriculture and better quality food? Third, moving forward, what are the opportunities and challenges on fostering digital technology and innovation to advance the food system? To open up our discussion today, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rainer Hoyfers as the Executive Director of the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies to give us an opening remark. Mr. Hoyfers, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aziza. And ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, good afternoon and a warm welcome to our today's roundtable discussion. It's a great pleasure to have you here. And Aziza already provided a good background and context of what we are going to discuss in this hour that we have together. Aziza just came back from the meeting of agricultural scientists in the G20 process last week. It was in Jogja, yeah, Aziza, I think. So we are obviously in Indonesia dealing very much with food security and sustainable agriculture issues, and really the G20 process and the T20, the Think 20 process has given us a boost in these discussions and also brought Indonesian voices very much into the global discussion. So we were very happy to be part of it. Center for Indonesian Policy Studies, for those of you who may not yet be aware, is a public policy think tank in Indonesia. We were the host of the T20 Task Force on Sustainable Agriculture and Food Security. Very happy to cooperate with IPB in this endeavor. What is a task force doing? A task force in the T20 would collect suggestions for policy briefs. We received about 100. Budami knows what the workload was when they all came in to sort through them, find out what are the ones that should be developed for the input that the T20 gives to the G20. There were lots of events, side events, where we discussed relevant topics. And all of this was done with a group of co-chairs of that task force. And of course, Budami was our lead co-chair, and our own board member, Budona Gultom, also was in that group of co-chairs. When we talk about sustainable agriculture and food security, we really talk about the core problems of the world today. I mean, this is really at the heart of it. If you think about it, we have climate change, we have changing weather patterns. Estimations are this could all affect crop yield by about 25%. So it's a huge impact on our harvests in the world. And at the same time, estimates are that in the next 30 years, due to population growth and changing consumption patterns, we might need up to 70% more calorie production in the world. So we have a huge task while we are affected by climate change. At the same time, we're dealing with probably the poorest communities in the world, farmers and rural communities. And at the same time, we're talking about agriculture contributing about a quarter to the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So we are at the center of a very complex problem, and we need solutions. And one of the solutions, as Aziza just said, really is technological growth, innovation. We need investment in green technologies. We need R&D for sustainable and higher yielding agriculture. If you want, what we do need is not just Industry 4.0, which is the big topic that's being discussed in governments worldwide, but also Agriculture 4.0, one that would actually give us the productivity boost without continuing making that at the expense of our natural resources, using ever increasing levels of fertilizer, etc. So all of this is a huge dilemma, but that's actually why we come together. And as I said, I think this T20 process, the G20, is just the right venue for bringing this up, because this is a global topic. No country goes alone in this. And for the participants here, I believe you are in the best hands with the panelists that we were able to get for this discussion. I'm sure Aziza is going to introduce them later in more detail, but Dr. Damayanti Buhori, Budami, as we call her, is as the co-chair actually from the Agriculture University in Bogor, and one of the key experts on the topic. But then we also have Dr. Baumiller from Germany, Dr. Malikul Ikram, who is actually giving us a corporate perspective. And we're also very happy to have Dr. Dil Bahadur Rahud from the ADB Institute here. So we need to get the brain power together, but also the corporate perspective to see what's possible, what needs to be done, within which limits. As I mentioned, and I also want to repeat that because this is very important to us. This event and also other events and efforts that we were able to do in the T20 process were supported by the Center for International Private Enterprise. Aziza just mentioned CIPS, so that's their acronym. They have generously supported us. So we were able to actually play that role of hosting that task force. So we're very grateful to them. And the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom has also supported today's event, for which we're also very grateful. With this, I want to conclude my few remarks at the very beginning and hand this back to Aziza. Thank you so much again, everyone, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for the opening remarks, Mr. Hoyfers. Today, we also have Professor Dr. Damayanti Buhori as the lead co-chair of T20 Task Force on Food Security and Sustainable Agriculture to give us an introduction to the T20 Communique and also to give a context to today's discussion. Prof. Damayanti, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Aziza. Thank you to CIPS, to Pak Rainer for the invitation. And I would like to say hello to my friends here, Heike and also Pak Dil, or Dil. And also, well, I think I would like to start with discussing a little bit about the food system itself. We all know that food systems are the nexus that links food security, nutrition, and human health, environmental sustainability, climate change, poverty reduction, rural development, and also social justice. And the term was actually coined during the 2021 UN Food System Summit. And it was spearheaded by the United Nations. And then the big message was that the transformation of food system is needed so that we can get back on track to achieve the 2030 agenda for SDG. And transformation of food system, there are 5 areas that are the focus of the food system transformation. And those are the shift to sustainable food for all, and then shift to a healthy consumption pattern, boost nature positive production, advance equitable livelihood, and the final one, build resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stress. So this last point, shocks and stress, we all know that we've gone through the pandemic, and now with the world situation, the geopolitical situation, the food system has become more and more vulnerable, and food insecurity is, people are now talking a lot about food insecurity. So when I flash back at the start of the T20, when we first started in T20, the Russian-Ukraine conflict has not yet escalated into the war that is now here at present. So what we are witnessing today is another example how the global food system continues to be rattled by economic, political, and environmental shocks around the world. So in our task force, which is the task force number 4 on food security and sustainable agriculture, there were several questions that we ask, key question that we ask. One of them would be, what should be the priorities of the G20 to support food system transformation in these times of conflict, climate crisis, and disruption? And then another question that was also raised was that how can G20 initiate global cooperation to build more healthy, equitable, sustainable, and resilient food system? The key word is global cooperation. So it becomes tougher in the situation that we are now in. So what is the agenda and the pathway of food system transformation at the global, and then how does it link to the national agenda? So these are the big questions that was discussed in the task force. And as what Pak Rainer just mentioned, we received lots of abstracts for the policy brief, but then we finally came up with 15 policy briefs. And one of the policy brief is the one that I will be conveying today. The title of the policy brief is the Digital Transformation on Agri-Food System, Policy Pathways for Greater Economic, Social Inclusion, Sustainability, and International Cooperation. I think you can download that in the T20 website, but if I'm not mistaken, CIPS will also put that in the chat box so that you can download it directly. So in addition to producing the 15 policy brief, we also produced the T20 Communique. And the T20 Communique is actually, it's a cross-cutting policy recommendations between 9 task force. So there are altogether 9 task force. And the policy recommendation that we produce in the T20 Communique is actually a cross-cutting issue between all the 9 task force. And for our task force, which is the food security, the policy recommendation also touches at least 4 or other 5 task force, which is trade, health, climate change, and energy, digital connectivity, and also financing. So you can see the 15 policy brief also in the T20 website. Altogether in the T20 Communique, there are 5 policy recommendations that are related to the food security and sustainable agriculture. The first policy brief is, the first policy recommendation is focusing on financing. And so we address the present food insecurity with a call that G20 should provide mobilization of resource, speedy mobilization of financial resource to address the humanitarian crisis that we are facing right now. So that is the first policy recommendation. And then the second policy recommendation is on the diversification of the food sources through diversifying the production, producing more nutritious food, and also the important message, shifting away from protectionism. And then the third policy recommendation is on increasing the affordability of healthy diets and encouraging investment in the local, national, regional, and global supply chain infrastructure. And one of the recommendations is that G20 should play a role in enhancing the public-private investment. The fourth one is on enhancing the agri-food supply chain, and that is by encouraging nature-positive production, by protecting natural system from new conversion for food production, and sustainably managing existing food production system and restoring degraded farmland. And the last one is on enhancing food production on the basis of environmentally friendly and sustainable agriculture practices. So there are more information in the T20 Communique that you can look at that. I think I will now focus the last part of what I'm going to convey on behalf of the Task Force 4 on the digital technology and innovation itself. So there are issues on digital technology in both the policy brief and also in the T20 Communique. So in general, we know that digitalization in agriculture sectors brings promises of multiple gains that deliver change in efficiencies, productivity, and sustainability at the farm level and across the value chains. So digitalization provides producers better information to make more timely decisions, and it offers more predictable outcomes. And with the rapid development of internet, remote sensing, machine learning, all are accelerating the transition to smart farming, as what Pak Rainer mentioned earlier, agriculture 4.0. So it's a smart farming, big data, precision agriculture. Maybe Pak Malik will dwell on that later. And it should be improving on production and also improve income. Now, when we look at this digitalization, we can see the difference that in advanced economy of the G20, we can see that these digital technologies are used to improve the monitoring, cataloging, dissemination of data, ensuring the agriculture food production are delivered with a small environmental footprint. However, when we look at the developing country, the challenges are still at the digital literacy and access to the technology. So to address this issue requires investment, such as devices, software, and of course, policy. And we need to really be careful and focus on reducing the digital divide between countries and within countries. So with that being said, we understand that this agriculture revolution brings promises, but also it brings technical, social, economic, ethical, and also practical questions regarding significant implication of the technology to our society. In particular, how could digitalization mitigate the impacts of digitalization agriculture on inequality, poverty, and environmental degradation and social justice? So this is like a two-faced coin where we see that digitalization can actually increase equality, et cetera, et cetera. But if it is not done correctly, it can actually it can decrease, but if it's not done correctly, it can fire back and increase the digital divide. So digital application and platforms have the potential to dramatically change the way knowledge is also being processed, how it's being communicated, how it's being accessed and utilized. So this raises a very critical question on the need of capacity building digital literacy. Okay, so this is one issue that I hope that we can discuss today. And so I would like to say that actually digitalization requires also a precautionary principles, the need to put at the end, at the context of social structure and setting, the local values and the culture of communities, particularly for the small scale producers and poor consumers. So the recommendations that we put out in the communique is based on the principles. So first of all, the principles is that the digitalization of agriculture should contribute to the fight against food insecurity and the nutrition problem. The second is that digitalization needs to develop a set of principles regarding ethics, social, political, and cultural environmental impacts. And third, the digitalization of agriculture should be put in the context of food system transformation in the countries as part of the science policy practices interface and accelerate this transformation process. And fourth, in the practical aspect, we need to create an enabling condition, support the capabilities of small-scale producers and develop suitable innovation. And last, regarding the technological innovation, digitalization should be complemented and go hand in hand with other forms of innovation, such as the institutional, the social, and cultural innovation that brings more comprehensive and holistic approach. So with that, I would like to close with several points of the policy recommendation that was being put forth by one of our policy brief. And that is that the first one is that the G20 should develop a concrete and concerted strategy to encourage its members to invest more in digital infrastructure and help other countries to do the same, with the aim of bridging the divide in access to digital technologies. And then G20 should support the development of strategic approaches to institutional capacity building to improve the role and function of agricultural research, extension, and cooperative organization in digital technology transformation. The third, the G20 should consider the data sustainability innovation nexus to prioritize and act on cross-sectoral policy themes and mobilize public investment and resources toward improving digital agriculture. The G20 should champion an international governance structure to support digitally enabled sustainable agriculture solution for the SDG, like putting in place a legal regulatory governance framework to address the negative consequences and risks associated with the digital technology. And the last one is that the G20 should also identify and promote essential safeguards to ensure sustainable digital agriculture and minimize unintended consequences. So Aziza, with that, I would like to close my remark and let us start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Damayanti. Today, we are also joined by a wonderful group of experts. It is an honor today to have Muhammad Maulana Malikul Ikram, PhD, as the Director of Research and Development of PT Biops Agrotechno Indonesia. Hello, welcome.
Hello, Aziza. Thank you.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. Today, we also have Dr. Heike Bouwmuller as the Senior Researcher and PARI Coordinator of Center for Development Research, or ZEF. Hi, Dr. Heike. Welcome. We also have Dr. Dil Rahud, as the Vice Chair of Research and Senior Research Fellow of Asian Development Bank Institute, or ADBI. Welcome, Dr. Dill. Hi, okay, so we will start the discussion today with presentations from our experts. Afterwards, we will open up the space for discussion with our audience from Zoom and YouTube to ask questions in the chat box at any point during the discussion. And they will also be brought forth during the Q&A session after the presentations. Now I would like to invite, Dr. Malik as the Director of Research and Development of PT Biops Agrotechno Indonesia. Dr. Malik, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Azza, for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and I introduce myself again. My name is Malik from PT Biops Agrotechno Indonesia, and I'm now work as Director of Research and Development in Biops Agrotechno. So in this occasion, I would like to give some point of view from the industry itself about how to promote sustainable agriculture and improve the food quality through digital technology that we already done, and also from the point of view of technologies in the industry. So, okay. So as we know, where and how to adopt these digital technologies in the food system itself. So actually, in the food system itself, we have many line of smaller system that we can use. So for example, production, and then the processing itself, distribution until the end customer, the restaurants, retails. And even outside of this system, this supply chain, we also have the financing and also the marketplace and other supporting system in this food supply chain. So how digital technologies can help this food system to become a better and more resilience from the shock and changes in the future. So first, I would like to talk about the production first, and how to improve the quantity and also improve the quality of our food. First one is that how to improve the production itself, that we have to know that in the agriculture, especially in Indonesia or maybe other developing countries, it still require human a lot. It still have high human dependency. And meanwhile, the regeneration of farmer is usually very slow. And if we conduct the survey to them, usually the adoption of mechanization and technology, about 50% hesitate to adopt this improvement by using technologies, because mainly they use the ancestral knowledge and doesn't really believe about these new technologies. It caused by the farmers usually considers as old age or old generation farmers. That's why we need to invite all the young farmers to our young generations to become farmers. But for us, usually we say that the farmers with the suit. So because they can be anywhere using suit, but they can also manage the farm anytime, anywhere. And moreover, the problems in the agriculture itself is that agriculture use around 80% of utilized water available in the world. And this water usually, if we did not use it efficiently, it become a water loss, a runoff that damage the environment also. That's why the efficient use of resource including water is important to maintain the clean water and also affect the future generation to become be a better generation, and of course to be more sustained in the production in agriculture. That's why, and up to 40% water is wasted. That's why for our product itself, we create a promotion that able to improve productivity 40%, saving operational costs and saving water and fertilizer costs. And this is using the smart irrigation system to adopt this by adopting or sensing the environmental conditions such as light, humidity, and rain condition and other variables. And then we calculate how much the water needed if the condition is like this, A, B, C, and so on. The adoption of technology not only in the irrigation system, but also in the to improve the quality of the product itself by using this grow light or maybe the light enhancement in the tomato plants. We can also improve the lycopene or like the added value tomato itself, lycopene, to be enhanced by the grow light installation. And another example of the technological adoption in the agriculture itself is to use drone to monitor the plant or the farm condition itself by image processing. By using this drone, we can know the middle to low altitude picture of our farm and maybe calculate whether there have pests or disease that can be mitigated earlier. And we also develop the method to quantifying pest population using camera and automatically like this to in the tomato plants like thrips and whitefly. That's why we can create early warning system so that the farmers everywhere, not only in Indonesia but all other worlds, all over the world, can help to mitigate the risk of the pest and disease in their plants. In the food supply chain itself, from farm to fork, we can also use several technologies. For example, in the storage and processing technologies, we can also use gas sensor, such as maybe O2, CO2, or maybe NH4 ammonia that are marker, usually becoming a marker for the bacterial investment in the food product itself. So by using this gas sensor, we can know which container or maybe which storage that already contaminated by the bacteria and already not safe to make, so that the industry itself or maybe the consumer itself can know or predict which one is the safer product to us. And also another technology that I bring today is the freeze-dry technology. It's not so digital, but using this freeze-dry, we can store the samples or store the food itself longer. Usually for using common drying process, it takes around 1 to 3 years, but using freeze-dry, it can be stored up to 10 to 50 years, 10 to 20 years. And this can help the future generation also to store the product itself if any first major accident happens in the future. In the distribution and consumption itself, the adoption of technology can be used. We can use the RFID tag and blockchain, and this technology itself can be used to monitor the product, our product itself, like this monitoring itself can bring benefit to the industry itself and also to the consumer itself by making sure that our product is authentic and real and also without any damage at all. And also the development of application for food sharing to reduce the waste is also important to reduce the food loss in all over the world. And for the food environment itself or the socioeconomic perspective, actually the technological adoption in agricultures are very difficult, and even in USA and Switzerland, and also this is also applied to Indonesia. Usually the barriers for adoptions are the farm's education, economical costs, and also the available infrastructures that planted in the farms or their farms. So by knowing this barriers for adoption, we need to make the cost to be lower, or maybe we need to help by the other sectors of government, maybe probably, or maybe banking or financing sectors, to make the farmers use this technology, because usually the farmers are low economical sector. That's why the adoption of technology itself is very difficult, even for us. And also by digitalization of farm practices, by using agricultural field mapping, using drone or satellite, agricultural marketplace to cut the supply chain, to be shorter supply chain, will able to bring benefit to the farmers itself, and also to the industry that sells the farmers' needs. And farming consultation can also help the farmers' education by giving the scientific background with more close relationship with them, and also to help them financing the agriculture with help crowdsourcing application and easier financing scheme. It can help to improve the adoption of technologies for farmers in the future. So as I already mentioned, there are many ways to adopt these digital technologies in the food system, and I hope we can all work together to apply these technologies to create a better generation. So let's say future generations, application, and digital technology with support from all stakeholders. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malik, for the insightful presentation. Now, to add to the insightful discussion, I would like to invite Dr. Heike Baumüller, a senior researcher and PARI coordinator of Center for Development Research, or CEF, to share her perspective. Dr. Heike, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to be at this event, and to especially to follow Maliko on his very practical presentation, and mine is a little more theoretical, but you will see that it links very well. I would also like to share some slides, if that's okay, but I think we would, fantastic, thank you so much. And I would like to talk a little bit about, like mine is a slightly sort of maybe higher level presentation, in the sense that I would like to talk a bit about status, trends, and also policy and investment priorities around digital agriculture, and looking at sort of more broadly across low and middle income countries. So let me start with looking a little bit at trends. You may be familiar with this particular graph, which is showing the evolution of digital agricultural services that over the last decade, and this is exactly the sorts of services that we just heard about. And you see, I mean, a very rapid growth, first of all. That's already interesting in itself. You also see that digital advisory services, the ones that give primarily advice to farmers, in the majority. But what is an interesting development is that you're also seeing more digital procurement services and e-commerce services. And this is really where we then start getting into food systems, because we're moving beyond production to also link producers to the market, on to possible buyers, or directly to consumers. What we also see is that there are slight differences between the different regions of the world. So in this, when it comes to these digitally enabled services, Sub-Saharan Africa, in fact, has by far the most services on offer, at least at the time when these maps were being generated. And but then you also see them emerging in all other regions, but with slightly different focus. So in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, it's really still more about advisory services, whereas in even Southeast Asia, you have also digital procurement that's coming up strongly, and the same in Latin America. So you see that different regions have different strengths. So there could be also opportunities for cross-regional learning. So what are some of the trends in digital agriculture? And in fact, we heard about all of them already, because you will see that they could all be found in the work that BIOPS is doing. So these are 4 trends that I think we can highlight. So one is around data, the other is around platforms, around blockchain technologies and autonomous systems. I'll just quickly run through them what I mean by that. So one is that what we're all aware of is that there's continuously collection of data going on these days, but then now it's not just mobile phones anymore, it's also sensors, drones, which we also just heard about, all sorts of different types of digital technologies that are being used to collect data. And then you have digital algorithms that analyze that data, which support decision making. You also have an emergence of platforms that link users, that link market players, that also link labor to job offers for money, creating whole new different types of jobs as well. You have blockchain technologies. We just heard that as an example, which is often used for traceability, transparency, to track products, to create digital ledgers, to manage supply chains. And then you also have a growing number of machines, be it drones or different types of robots that are being used along the entire chain and the entire food system to start automating production processes. And maybe to make it just a little bit less abstract, I mean, in addition to the example we just heard, while coming from Indonesia, you might be aware of Amul, the Indian company. And what I find interesting about this particular example is the way that it's using digital technologies at very different levels. So on the one hand, you have Amul sources primarily from smallholder producers, from millions and millions of them. And the way it manages to do that is through digitalization, that people come sometimes with a liter to bring milk, but it's all digitally registered. The fat content is measured where it is being collected, and then the payment is made instantly in the collection centers. But it's a basic level, but extremely helpful. But then it moves up all the way to fully automated production systems for different types of milk-based products. And in the end, you have this incredible range that is being marketed through also digitally enabled channels. So a wide range of types of technologies that then help a major company to source from smallholder producers. So the question, of course, nowadays is, and maybe this is a discussion we can also have with our colleague from BIOPS, is about commercial viability. It's like, when are these types of services actually commercially viable? And I can share, because my area of research is more focused on Africa, but I can share some data from there, where in 2019 they documented digital agricultural solutions and tried to find out who's actually using them and are they generating money. And then they find that in like the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, there were about 33 million registered users, but only about 42 of them are actually engaged, and only about 15 to 30% of those are actually active users. And it's also all very geographically concentrated in East Africa and amongst just a few services. So in terms of scaling, there's still quite a long way to go. And what they also found in terms of financial viability, that only about a quarter of these companies actually said that they were financially viable. And well, they said it themselves, so we can see if that quarter is even realistic. But also that maybe on a positive note, you find that these digital services are actually only thought to be accounting for 6% of the addressable market. So in that sense, that could be negative in the sense that it's very little, but it also shows an opportunity that there is an addressable market that can be reached. But at the same time, we also see that in terms of funding, the share of these digital agricultural service companies is still very low in comparison to other tech companies. So in terms of some of the priorities, I just highlight a few. There are a lot of them, of course, but just to highlight a few. We already talked about connectivity as a prerequisite. Without connectivity, you will not have a digital transformation in agriculture. But it's also about where that connectivity needs to happen. And these are some maps that were produced by the World Bank to find out where do we have which type of network in farm areas, farmlands. And you see that maybe the challenge in some of the countries is not so much anymore that there's no coverage, but that it's just not fast enough. There's too much 2G, which is fine for simple applications. But if you're starting to move into the types of applications we just heard about, you will need better connectivity. And it's also quite big differences. You need to see some countries that are still pretty much green, and then you see some countries that are already pretty much only 4G. And you also have regional differences. This is now Latin America, which is where you also have a lot of green still in Africa, which is interesting because Africa is the home of by far the most digital agricultural services. And at the same time, it also is one of the regions with the most farmland that is not actually covered by any kind of network. Then coverage is also not enough, right? So we need coverage, but we also need coverage to be used. So this is, I found quite interesting data. The interesting bar to look at is the yellow one, which shows the share of the population that is covered by mobile internet, but is not actually using it. So we need many more interventions to actually support use, be it through affordability, through skill development. I'll get back to some more ideas later. And another issue that is close to my heart is that we really need to close the gender gap, because this is again now internet use, but you would have similar graphs for digital agricultural services, is we still have a big gender gap, and it's persistent in most regions. And even South Asia, which was looking quite good for a while, the gender gap is increasing again. And it's really, this is between 2017 and 2021, it's really not closing in some of the low and middle income regions. And you just find that women are still often a lot less likely to own a phone, especially to get onto the internet. So one proposal we have come up through our research is around we were trying to think, how do you connect users and providers? Because you're seeing providers and you know there's a demand, but there needs to be a better connection between the two. So one area we looked at is how you could build digital bridges through digital platforms, which is one of the trends. And here we really need to look at the perspective on what do the users need and what do the platform and service providers need. So we asked both. And when it comes to the users' priorities, what they really need to be able to use digital technologies more and digital services, they need to be able to find them better because they're just still too difficult to locate. They need to know that they are of high quality and they're reliable, to build trust in the services. You need access for those that have lower skills. You need to adapt to the different types of digital skills and the different types of affordability, the ones that can actually pay for different types of services. And you need these types of inclusive platforms that we just heard about as well. These are some of the priorities of the users. So what do providers need for them, the platform and service providers? And here we come back, of course, to connectivity and infrastructure that will always come up, but there's also a need for more finance, venture capital finance, need for more human capacity building. So that is a common element on both in both perspectives. But you also need to be inclusive and actually engage smallholder farmers. You also need to have incentives, or they're calling for incentives, to onboard and train these smallholder farmers. And my last point I want to make is that it's not just about digital bridges, but I think is we should never forget in this digitalization of agriculture is the human bridges, the human element that I think will continue to be crucial. And this is some findings from research we did in Africa around use of digital technologies amongst intermediaries, so output dealers, input dealers, extension agents. And we were actually surprised to find that how extensively they're making use of these technologies to exchange information, facilitate networking, and reduce transaction costs. And you see the graph on the right is the types of networks that they have where they use mobile phones to communicate. And you see all of them use it to communicate with producer, not all of them, but almost all of them. But then they also have other networks. So they are really using these technologies to link to other players in the value chains. And that is something that we can capitalize on. But we find that the trust element in this engaging in these types of digital services continues to be crucial, even though they've been around for a while and should not be neglected. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Baumüller, for the wonderful presentation. I would like to invite Dil Rahut, the Vice Chair of Research and Senior Research Fellow of Asian Development Bank Institute, or ADBI, to share with us his expert perspective regarding this topic. So, Mr. Rahul, what is your perspective on advancing in the food systems through digital technology and innovation?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me share my slides. I have a few slides that I would like to share. Okay. Yeah, and let me begin from the place where Damayanti left. You can hear me, right?
Yes, very well.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
So where Damayanti left was that, you know, as a humanity, I think we have made significant progress in food security and agriculture productions. You can see that the productions compared to 1960s, we have like more than triple our productions. And most of this increase in productions has not come because of increase in lands, but it has come because of intensifications. You know, we have been able to produce more from small amount of land. So we have achieved significant progress, and you can see from the Sustainable Development Goal that we have made very, very significant progress as a human being. And also our fight against COVID recently has also shown that you know, as a human being, we have capacity to face challenges. When you are together, we can face challenges no matter how difficult it is. So that's where we are. But then if you move a little forward, you know, despite making so much of progress, there are still challenges. One of the challenges that you see is even today, there are number of people, over 600, 700 million people are undernourished. You know, almost 2 to 3 billion people cannot afford good meal, healthy meal. And if you look at from the concept of double burden and triple burden of nutrition, we find over 200 people suffering from iron deficiencies. We have, you know, like 2 billion, or over 2 billion people are suffering from the overnutrition, diabetes. So the challenge is still not over, and this challenge has been even made more difficult because of the climate change. You know, the climate is changing so fast, and the way climate is changing and the population is growing, it's becoming very, very challenging for us to feed this growing populations. So now, like when you look at all these things, you can see that ICT can play a very important role in you know, like feeding the growing populations, as Heike and Ikram and Damayanti has pointed out that if we go and take up this digital technology to the farmers, then we have the possibility to feed the growing population, as well as cope with the climate challenges. Not only cope with the challenges, as you know, agriculture is a victim of climate change. I think it's one of the most vulnerable sectors to the climate change, but also it's one of the perpetrator to the climate change. Agriculture, forestry, and livestock contributes to about a quarter of GHG emissions, and I think agriculture has to also play an important role in net zero carbon emissions. So if we don't go for net carbon zero emissions, our productions will lose the productivity and will not be able to feed the world. But on the other hand, if you look at it, when you go for net zero carbon emission, if you start adopting the technologies and processes that we have in places, it's going to, you know, I mean, like creates lots of shocks in the supply of foods. So that's where I think ICT technology can come and play a very, very important role. And if you look at, if you look at the agriculture sectors, where it can play an important role is that there are a large number of farmers who are very rich, who can afford everything. But when you talk about this smallholder farmer, they're very, very poor farmer. And they are so poor that, you know, even today, like, you know, with from the large number of research that we have done in Africa and Asia, they cannot even afford to buy hybrid seeds. The reason they cannot afford is because they don't have capacity. And that's what I think Ikram also pointed out, the cost component. That's very, very important. And the second component that Heike, Ikram, and Damayanti highlighted is about the the capacity, although I mean, like, even if you make it accessible, these poor farmers are illiterate, they don't have capacity. So it's very important to build that capacity. Bringing down the cost and building the capacity is very, very important. And there are a number of areas where digitalization can play a role in improving productions and improving food supply and food security. The thing is that when you look digitalization, you look from farmers to the consumers. You have to look at the entire chain, from the inputs going to the farmers and farmers producing, and then going up to the consumer. So if we look at all the entire gamut of supply chains, then only I think we'll be able to make significant difference in terms of carbon mitigations, as well as ensuring food security. So here I have put some of the areas where like digitalizations can play an important role, and Heike has actually more clearly pointed out where and how digitalization in agriculture sectors can play a very important role. And now moving forward, and Heike's presentation also showed that digital finance has really taken off, and it's one of the like beside advisory, because advisory service is very easy. I think that's why you can see that bar on advisory service is very high, particularly like extension services, the meteorological informations, and finance side also it's very easy. I think. After these digitalizations, farmers are able to make most of the transactions through their smartphones. How about like and even in education, it can play a very important role, and access to government portals. But I would like to also reiterate what Heike and Damayanti has said, that we should note that ICT is a driver of change. It's an enabler, but not a solution. So we really need to bring out the human perspective. That's, I think, where it's very important. And the second most important things that my other panelists have also pointed out, and I would like to reiterate that good infrastructure, ICT infrastructures, when you're talking about like when you want to provide advanced apps, I think like 2G, 3G will not solve the problem. And we have seen in the map pointed out by my previous panelists that problem is there. And the other things are like, reliable and affordable internet services. Like, these are very important. Like if you look at access to electricity itself is low, and electricity is one of the prerequisites for providing better ICT services. So, and then the cost part, the literacy part, and reducing the cost as much as possible. And I strongly believe that we are in the initial stage, and over a period of time, the cost of the technology as well as other costs will decrease. But my only worry is that we are talking about almost like 400 million farm households across the world, particularly in developing Asia, very poor, who are living in less than like $2 a day. And how to make this technology accessible to them, unless you bring this technology to them, like because they are the one, like there are big farmers, there are a large farm household, but these small farm households, how to reach them. And within the small farm household also, you can see very, very heterogeneous groups of households, heterogeneous groups of farm households. So the biggest challenge for us is to how to make these ICT services, digitalization, accessible to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rahud, for the response and your presentation as well. Our speakers have raised some key points on the digitalization of agriculture, including the challenges as well as opportunities of the adoption of technology in the agriculture food system. Now I would like to invite participants to share their visions and questions on digital technology and innovation on food systems. Now we are opening the floor to our participants who wish to ask questions to our panelists. We are also going to share the floor of discussion with the audience. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the raise hands feature to ask questions directly to our panelists, or share some of your insights regarding today's topic with the speakers directly. You can also put them in the chat box. Now, while we are waiting for the questions or thoughts shared by the online participants, I have a question which I want to ask to Dr. Baumüller. So the question is, what are the possible compromises that need to be made in order to have a successful collaboration between developing and developed countries to achieve a universal access to food security?
Now, that is a big question. If I could answer that question, I would probably be the UN Secretary General. I think, and this goes, of course, way beyond digitalization, but let me just maybe stick a little bit to digitalization, because I think, I mean, this is the topic of what we're talking about. I think one thing that would be, from a sort of learning between industrialized and lower income countries, would be to realize that the innovative potential that there is around digitalization and agriculture in low and middle income countries. I mean, I showed this in the map, but we also hear it from ICRAM. It's just like, it's incredible what they are doing with digital technologies. And I think there's still this arrogance in industrialized countries that we think that sometimes that technology innovation happens here, but in fact, a lot of technology innovation and much more cost-effective technology innovation, sort of adapted to the ground, to the local realities, that in fact could just as well be useful in many other parts around the world. So I think there could be much more sort of cross-fertilization in both directions in terms of technology exchange in terms of the cooperation. Well, if you move beyond digitalization, I think one of the main issues that we need to improve around is in addition to resolving conflicts, is better trade integration and fairer trading systems. Digital technologies again can help in that, in terms of traceabilities, in terms of helping to meet standards and all of that. But I think that would be another big area where we could have more equity and contribute to better food exchanges and food security.
Thank you so much. Mr. Dill or Dr. Malik, do you want to add on that? All right, then, moving on to the second question. Here I have a question to Dr. Malik. So how can technologies help with future agriculture contingencies? For example, if there is 1 or 2 countries that suffered from droughts or crop failures, how will the cooperation help limit the damage caused by the disasters?
Thank you very much for the question. So how the technologies can help with this kind of challenges? I think that, like, for example, the drought itself, or maybe, like, for example, the drought itself, the efficient use of water can also help the farms itself to grow better yield, of course. But if there are no water, that's another problem, right? Because if there are drought itself, I think the genetic engineering itself, or the production of the better crop that is able to handle the drought itself, is also important. So not only the technology on the digitalization, also in the technology to improve the plant itself is also important, in my opinion, as biotechnologists. So that's one way that I can share to you.
Yeah, if I may jump in here to add to Ikram, I think one is, of course, I mean, coping with the drought is basically ex ante measures, where I think if farmer gets to know gets to have an idea about meteorological informations, then farmer could go for drought tolerant varieties of rice and wheats and other crops. So that's something I think I would feel that that channel would be a very useful channel to cope with the drought.
Yes, that's true.
All right, thank you so much. Now we have Pak Rofi Grandiosa from UNPAD. I'm gonna ask you to unmute. You can ask the questions or share your thoughts directly to our panelists. You're still on. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the valuable opportunity, and nice to know you all. Maliku Ikram, Heike, and I am from the Universitas Padjadjaran in the aquaculture field, and I would just like to share a lot of interesting things in this meeting this afternoon. But in the field of aquaculture, I see also that technology is in West Java. Yeah, some individual parties develop their own technology sometimes, yeah, without any corporate or corporate involvement. I think the penetration of ICT is very well, yeah, in West Java, and I don't know what they really need, but for example, I met a farmer, a fish farmer, who made his own fish feeding, and he can monitor the fish feeding device through wireless signals like that. That's just one example. He lives in Pangandaran, this person, but yeah, he has a basic of graduate from IT. But that's just one example. I just would like to know, how does the world, I mean, like, what you call it, develop itself in the ICT? Do we have to just wait for the government to act, or wait for people like Malikul Ikram, for example, who make startup companies? And that's just my opinion or information from it this afternoon. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pak Rofi. So, Dr. Malik, Dil, and Dr. Barmula, anyone wants to respond to that?
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to add here is that like when it comes to like when technology is being developed and because is being disseminated and scaled up, I have realized that, you know, from my field experience in different countries, one of the best method would be hiring rather than purchasing. Like, you know, when the technology is being developed and is being deployed, this technology is very, very expensive for the farmers to afford. So even if it is developed in the like global north, which is very expensive technology, it could be, if it can be scaled out on a hiring mode, then it would help us in easing lots of problems that Ikram raised about the cost, and also I think Rafi was also trying to highlight that who is going to develop the technology and who is going to deploy. I think one comes from the cost perspective, and I strongly believe, like even in the health sectors, we have been encouraging that the health technology should be on a rental basis, like so that it's cheaper and it's affordable. So that's something that I would like to urge. I don't know if Dr. Ikram would agree, because it might bring down his cost and like his profit.
Yeah, actually, for our company does not have the rental revenue stream. So yeah, I agree with you that it also able to reduce the cost, and even another revenue stream also to be like off taker, or also the profit sharing is also available nowadays. So yeah, we can also talk with the farmers which revenue stream is more convenient to them. And also in addition to the Dr. Rapid opinion, I would like to add to Mr. Rocky that the one who needs to deploy, or the one that we can do to enhance this, like the farmers in the Pangandaran itself, is that to build a community for them, like so that the fish farmer itself can invite the other fish farmers to use the technology, and believe this technology will help them. Actually, because it's very difficult to invite the fish farmer if the other person is not directly touching this area itself. Maybe that's the addition.
All right, thank you so much. We also have another question from Fitria, Department of Nutrition Science from University of Indonesia. I would like to hear the opinion from all presenters. Sustainable food system to achieve healthier diet is also one of the focus in the field of health and nutrition. Is there any experience on the collaboration between digital agriculture or smart farming and health or nutrition sector to tackle nutrition related issues? If not yet, what would be the opportunities and challenges? Anyone would want to start with that?
Perhaps I can have a go at that one,
Yeah,
because I
sure,
think it's actually a very interesting question.
Sure.
And I think this is this goes even beyond digitalization, because it's a bigger question around the linkages between agricultural production and nutrition concerns. So I think even there we just need, at the basic level, need better linkages. And I think this is then translated in digital agriculture, that link is not yet being made so much. I know that there are sort of initiatives to have digital technologies that help people understand what they need to consume better, and in terms of meeting their nutritional needs. And you know, just like you have advisory services, farmers, you might have them for consumers, and where I think would be a great opportunity if this could then be linked to agricultural types of interventions and digital services that would then say, well, if people, if we know that people, you know, it's about data, right? So if we know that there's more demand for these types of products for nutritional purposes in particular areas, particular regions, you could really respond to that, and producers could respond to that. So you would link the nutritional demands with the nutritional production levels through digital technologies. I think that's one area where there would be an opportunity. I don't think it's happening yet. So I think this is also a good business opportunity.
Thank you. Dil, do you want to add on that? And maybe Dr. Malik as well?
Sorry. To add to Heike's point, like I'll touch from the like not from the digitalizations, but from the climate perspective. If you look at the demand side, the way to tackle GHG emissions from the demand side, there are two. One is the food waste and food loss management. By handling that properly, we can reduce the GHG emissions. The other is the switching to more carbon, like, you know, less carbon intense diet. So maybe, like, you know, going for more vegetarian fruits and vegetables, or even if you go for meat, then you go for lower carbon emitting meat, like, you know, fish and chicken. So definitely, I think, you know, I mean, like, dietary changes has to play an important role in terms of GHG emissions. And I think awareness campaign in terms of, like, you know, motivating people to change their dietary habits would really be helpful, not only like in terms of improving like the dietary, the healthy diet, but also, like, you know, going for more environmentally friendly diets.
All right, thank you so much.
Maybe can I add something?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
go ahead.
So maybe one of the experiences that I have here, maybe not related with the biotechno, but here in Osaka University, in the university that I graduated a PhD, that using gas sensor, or maybe the crystal technology, or like, sorry for the troubles. Sorry. Okay. That using these technologies like crystal and also the gas sensor can help to reduce the food loss and waste, that for everyone to provide more food to reduce the malnutrition problems. That's maybe one addition. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Anything else from the panelists? Do you want to add? Do you want to ask each other questions from the presentation? No, okay. We also have a couple of questions here. There's this question, the last one is asking to Pak Rofi Grandiosa, so you can also answer that on the chat box. Right. So due to time constraints, I don't think we will be able to respond to all the questions that we have here. Before we close, I would like each of our speakers to give us the closing statement before we end the discussion today. I will start with Dr. Bamula. You can go first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for these great insights into also some of the practicalities of digitalization, and I find that very interesting, and also for raising this important question around what does it actually take, what is driving this digital transformation, that from our colleague Rafik Andiosa, who was that is the key question, in fact. And I think maybe just to close my few very short closing marks, I looked at this in Kenya, in the context of Kenya. What was really driving it, I think, to a large extent, is visionary, dedicated individuals that I really want to see a change, combined with a supportive environment from government, not the driving force, but just the supportive environment, and a demand and a usefulness of applications that were being developed. Because in the end, if there's no business case, then there's not going to be a digital agricultural service. So I think these types of factors is what in the end will drive this sector forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Malik, you can continue.
So my closing statement would be that to adopt these digital technologies in the farm or in the agriculture itself, we need more help, not only from the industry itself, from the government, academia, and not only within the country itself, but also the transfer of knowledge from all others countries that having great agricultural technologies, such as Netherlands or maybe Japan. So that I hope with the G20 itself, we can have more collaboration in the agriculture and digitalization agriculture itself. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dil?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to, as always, I would like to, put the smallholder farmers at the centers of all the discussions. And it's not only about the livelihood of 400 million smallholder farmers, it's also their family. So I would say if there's a household size of 5, we are talking about almost 2 billion people. Their livelihood, their food security, that's one. And second thing is that it's also about their, 80% of what they produce are being sold in the markets. So unless you use digital technology to empower them to cope with the climate change and other uncertainties, then it becomes we will face not only a smallholder will face challenges with their livelihood, but also feeding the growing populations. That's not only feeding growing population, but also feeding them healthy diets. So these are the things that I would like all the policymakers to see how we can make technology accessible to poor smallholder farmers.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. It has been a pleasure to moderate you for such an interesting and insightful discussion. Once again, I would like to thank Professor Damayanti Buhori, Dr. Heike Bamula, Dr. Malikul Ikram, and Dr. Dil Rahud for sharing your insights. I am Aziza Fauzi. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again in another event. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye.
Bye.
So much, everyone.